exclusively on ESPN Plus. UFC 313, Saturday. Reigning light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira defends his title against number one contender Magomed Ankalaev, and an explosive lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Pazzi. UFC 313, Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Buy it on ESPNPlus.com/PPV.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet,
CVS.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV, just some of our insurance needs. And they take care of all of them and make sure that they do everything they can to save you money, because customer service means everything to them. All at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Very pleased to be joined by the outstanding Greg Pickel, Blue White Illustrated, who joins us now in the show. Greg, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Steve, always good to be with you. Hope you're doing well.
5-1 seeds, Greg. 3-2 seeds, 2-4 seeds. Did it play out in the pre-seeds about the way you thought it might?
Yes, it certainly did for Penn State wrestling. I think the only question really that I think anyone had coming into this preceding process was where Brady Davis would end up. There were some projections that had him as low as 6 and as high as number 4, which is where he ended up. Otherwise, things look about as expected. These won't finalize, of course, until after the coaches meet on Friday out in Evanston, but there's rarely changes based on past history. So it should be set for Penn State to head to the Big Ten championship, of course, with all 10 starters, as you mentioned, 5 number 1 seeds among them. So it will be favored yet again to win this tournament as it continues its progression toward the national tournament a couple weeks from now in Philadelphia.
Yeah, okay, so this is going to be at Northwestern coming up. And Penn State's in a great spot. We know they had to endure a couple of injuries, some illness down the stretch. In fact, this team's been hit with illness a bunch of times this season. But the way Cale schedules, how important is it the intelligence with which he schedules so that he peaks at the right time with this team?
Yeah, it goes in part to Penn State having a non-conference dual meet opponent almost every year for senior day or senior night whenever that match is scheduled. And, yeah, the Big Ten season gets you as ready as it can for the postseason, and then that last match is always a chance to tune up and fix any final things or continue on whatever plan and trajectory you were on before the Big Tens and then, of course, the national tournament. So, yeah, there's no doubt the way they start the year, and it changes at times. Obviously, wrestling is one of the sports where when you have the Olympic, team trials or things of that nature, it changes the approach in some years based on when the Olympics are and things like that. But, yeah, they schedule in a way that makes sure that they have enough matches to get going early and figure out any lineup questions they might have or approach they might have for specific wrestlers. And then they get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule and then always have that last non-conference duel to iron anything out. So, yeah, it's been like that for a few years now, and certainly when you look at the success Penn State has had, it cannot be argued with or faulted or otherwise critiqued. It's worked very well, and it's one of the many things in this program that have worked very well since Cale Sanderson arrived.
Well, what's interesting is there are certain words that are used today that get used quickly and get overused. One is dynasty, the other one is historic. If I got to take a stat line and draw it out to 8 levels here to get to historic, really, I'm not interested. But Penn State is historic in wrestling. It is a dynasty. So I want to start with Carter Sirachi, a chance to make history. You're talking about a chance to win a 5th national championship here. Greg, you watch him all the time. What is it about him where it seems that even when he has a, quote, down day, it's still a winning day.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can just go back to last year's NCAA championships where he won it all, his fourth national title, last one at 174 before bumping up to 184 for this season, of course, essentially on one leg. I mean, it just has a mindset where it doesn't really matter what your strength is. He's going to wrestle to his strength with the best of his ability. It's as we've seen when fully healthy, and as we saw last year when not. And he's more often than not over the course of his long and distinguished career, both in the high school level and at the college level, going to have an answer for whatever you do and find a way to either do it better or just overpower you with what he does best. So, yeah, there's no question that his legacy is already cemented with the 4 national titles and a chance to be a history maker and win a 5th. Certainly is what he came back to accomplish. And so, yeah, it's just that drive he has. I mean, you just see the way he goes about his training. You see the way he goes about his preparation on before a match or before a tournament, and he's always ready to go. And that is really something that can be said for most, if not all, this Penn State wrestling lineup and many of the wrestlers that came before this one, is that when the bright lights are on, whether that's during the regular season in a dual meet or in the postseason, these guys tend to shine brightest, and Carter Starocci embodies that as well as anybody else has over the course of the last the number of years, and we would expect that to continue this postseason.
Bo Bartlett is one of those guys that's always been in the close category, close. What can put him over the top this time where he's at the top of the podium? And I don't mean just Big Tens, but nationals. Yeah,
I mean, you saw it in his match where he beat Ohio State's Jesse Mendez earlier this year. I know some Penn State fans and observers get frustrated at times because he wrestles a lot of close matches. He has superior defense, and he creates openings and shots off of that, and that's not the way every Penn State guy wrestles. I mean, there's obviously a stark contrast between the matches and the way and the style of Bo Bartlett compared to, say, Mitchell Messenbrink, but they're both winning formulas, and Bo Bartlett's proven that over the course of his career. I think he's going to be remembered, and maybe obviously in part because of not yet having a national title, but I think he's going to be one of the more underrated guys and underappreciated guys when people look back on his career at Penn State. I mean, you keep in mind the fact that he started his career at a bigger weight than he was going to because they needed someone to fill that spot with Nick Lee, of course, holding down the fort. Then he moves down to 141. He's always been a team guy, and again, you said it, Steve, he's always been on the cusp of a national title. He hasn't got over that hump yet. Is this the year he does it? Again, he beat Mendez earlier this year from Ohio State. Goes into the Big Ten tournament as the number 1 seed. Obviously, how things play out at Northwestern will depend on whether or not he goes to the national tournament as the number 1 seed. But, again, he just is a guy who wrestles his way and has done so very successfully. Again, not yet with national title, but very successfully for a number of years, and just keeps building on it. And so I think that, again, his legacy will be one that I think people might appreciate more than they do maybe today. And I think that'll be the case regardless of what happens in this postseason.
You brought up Mitchell Messenbrink. I was talking to Cale, and this is a while ago, and I said, do you feel like other guys in the room should emulate what Messenbrink does because he's so entertaining? He says, no, there's only one of them. His style, Greg, is he brings people to watch him wrestle because he's so dynamic to me.
Yeah, he most certainly is. And he's a guy that, there's not too many that are capable of doing the things he does the way he does them and with the sort of flair that he does them with. So, he'll go into the Big Tens as number 1 seed as well, number 1 seed at Nationals, assuming things go according to plan at Big Tens. And, he's fantastically fun to watch, and he just continues to get better. And that's what these guys set out to do, right? That's any athlete, but he continues to find ways to do new things or do things he's done before in better ways and score points. And he's fast and he's fun, and you're right, people come to watch that and they get excited about that. And they are, of course, looking forward to seeing him get through this second postseason after his first one at Penn State, in which he, didn't win a national title but finished second. And he's now back, obviously, for another season at Penn State, his second, looking for his first national title. Going to be favored to do so. And, he's going to excite a lot of people along the way.
Wrestling's an individual sport. Yeah, there's a team score. What do Cale, Cody and Casey do to get them to feel like it is a team sport, even though it's so individual?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you've heard them talk about it, certainly Cale, but the other coaches, when they speak as well in media sessions or wherever it might be, I mean, these guys just want to be the best, and they want to do whatever it takes to be the best. And you always hear Cale Sanderson talk about not necessarily focusing on the wins and losses, but whatever the process you need to take to be the best in each day, each practice, each match, each dual meet, whatever it may be. And when you have 10 guys doing that, the team success follows. I mean, you hear it all the time in sports. It's cliche as anything that with individual or with team success, individual success follows. Obviously, it doesn't apply to wrestling necessarily the same way it does to football or basketball or whatever else, what other team sport you might be talking about. But when you have a bunch of guys in a room who all train that same way every single day, it brings the team up with it, and that brings the individual performances up with it. And then you lead to situations where you're setting NCAA point records and have a chance to do so again this year and set records for number of finalists and All-Americans and so on and so forth. So I just think it's that consistent message of not necessarily focusing on the outcomes, but the process that leads to them, and that will lead to the outcomes you want. And for these Penn State guys, it's meant a lot individually and a lot from a team perspective.
I just know where the Penn State guys are preceding this. I'm going to guess that Gable Stevenson's won at 285. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
All right. How anxious are you to watch potentially Kirk Fleet and Stevenson go head-to-head?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that that'll be the one most are focused on, the heavyweight final, should the seeds hold and those two meet. Obviously, Gable's a different wrestler than he was the last time Greg Kirkfleet met him, and so is Greg. So it'll be very interesting to see how those two attack each other, what they've obviously, certainly Gable's been following Kirkfleet's career since his last college season, and it's no secret what Gable's capable of doing. So that is going to be the match of the weekend, assuming it takes place. And there's obviously some other ones that are highlights and headliners and things like that, but there's no doubt that that is the one people are most interested in going into this weekend. They did not wrestle during the regular season, of course. Greg came into the regular season as the top dog at 285, and then when Gable came back, he moved down to number 2, and things have held firm there since. So it'll be a first shot to see how those two stack up before nationals, where you would expect them to meet again in what would presumably be, certainly in Gable's case, and I believe in Kirkfleet's too, final college match. So looking forward to that a lot.
Anything under the radar that you're really interested in seeing how a Penn State wrestler does based on the draw they get? Somebody that we could talk about the big ones all we want, but something under that you're looking for?
I'm really interested to see how Braden Davis does at
I thought so.
133 pounds. You mentioned that this team has fought injury, illness, things like that, and obviously Davis was on the mat and off the mat this year. He's the 4 seed at 133 pounds. That puts him on the top side of the bracket. And if the seeds hold against Drake Ayala of Iowa, the top seed at 133 in the potential semifinal there at 133 pounds. So, yeah, I'm very interested to see how he looks on the mat. Again, he has been off it, on it, things like that. Did he come back too soon? Did he not? We'll see. That was some of the conversation in the middle of last month. But, yeah, he's the one I'm most interested to see how he does, how he looks. Again, you don't have to be – that's another reason Penn State's had so much success at the national tournament, because it wants to win every match it can. It wants to win every match of Big Tens and be a Big Ten champion in an individual sense and a team sense. But there's the other side of that coin, of course, which says that, you don't need to be your best at Big Tens if the ultimate goal is to be at your best and win nationals. So just curious to see his approach, how he looks on the mat. And then, you can never forget about an exciting guy like Luke Lillidahl, the freshman.
Sure. Comes
in at the 4 seed at 125 pounds, has a pretty good year so far, has excited a lot of people in ways similar to how Mitchell Messenbrink does. So interested to see how his first Big Ten tournament goes too.
Greg, always a pleasure. You do tremendous work regardless of whatever sport it happens to be. Thank you so much for your time today.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve. Have a good one.
That's Greg Pickel. All right, on3.com, Blue White Illustrated. Back with more in a moment. Brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the Pickle Bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you and thank you for your years of patronage.